Discover the incredible moment. A U.S. Marine encountered a lost girl in a snowstorm. Her words whispered hope in his heart. Jake Thompson gripped the steering wheel of his truck, knuckles white against the backdrop of swirling white madness. Just days ago, he'd been counting the minutes until he'd be back home in Montana. He was finally returning to the warmth of family after what felt like years in a distant land. But now, panic bubbled in his stomach as the blizzard clawed mercilessly at the world outside. Snow blurred the familiar roads into an indistinguishable haze, and a creeping dread began to gnaw at him. He took a deep breath, attempting to quell the torrent of anxiety that threatened to overtake him. The ghost of his time in combat flashed through his mind. The choice between his safety and protecting others filled him with an unease he'd thought was buried. He steadied his breath, reminding himself why he was here. Not just to return home, but to reconnect with a life he'd fought so hard to preserve. And yet, in this moment, trapped in nature's embrace, he felt exposed and utterly vulnerable. As visibility dwindled, a sudden movement on the side of the road pierced through the storm. Jake squinted, another twist in this treacherous ride, and there, hunched against the howling wind, was a small figure. A girl. His heart raced as he parked the truck. He threw open the door, the freezing air hitting him like a slap. "Hey, are you okay?" he shouted, voice barely cutting through the storm's roar. The girl lifted her tear-streaked face, her bright red boots sticking out like beacons in the chaotic white. "I can't find my mom and dad," she cried, her voice shaky. Jake knelt down, desperate to comfort her. "What's your name?" "Lily," she sniffled. Her small frame trembled against the frigid gusts. As she spoke of ice skating with her dad, of hot chocolate on the coldest nights, his heart twisted painfully. Memories of long-lost holidays with his own family flooded back. Laughter, warmth, and an ache for home that he feared he might never fully escape. Jake's instincts kicked in. He felt the fierce yearning to protect her, a fierce urge that waged war against the harsh reality of their situation. "We need to find your parents," he said, hoping to infuse some strength into his own fraying resolve. But with each passing moment, the storm worsened, a beast relentless in its intent to cage them both. The weight of his past life collided with the present and became suffocating. Every life he didn't save, every promise made felt like a chain wrapped around his heart, pulling him under the icy depths of guilt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But how could he save this girl when he couldn't even save himself from the memories of what he left behind? As Jake led Lily through the howling storm, every step felt like a tug-of-war between his desperate need to protect her and the looming ghosts of past missions where he'd failed. Each crunch of snow underfoot seemed to echo her innocence and marginalize his own fears. A voice, distant, lost in the winds, floated through the storm. Shouts, calls for help. Was it her family? A glimmer of fervent hope clashed with uncertainty in him, causing his pulse to quicken. Could he reach them? Would the storm drag them all into a deeper void? As he tightened his grip on Lily's small hand, the weight of his internal struggle became his own blizzard. The path ahead blurred as confusion swallowed him whole. Would he be their savior, or would he fail them yet again? The stakes were maddeningly high, and in the swirling white void before them, Jake realized the battle for courage was only just beginning. Lily's small hand gripped his, fragile yet determined. Each step they took through the blizzard was more than just a physical journey. It felt like a confrontation with his own fears. The howling winds whispered threats of failure and despair, suffocating him like the steam rising from a dark abyss. Could he maneuver through the chaos to find a path that led them both to safety? A fleeting image of victory blazed through his mind. Lily reuniting with her parents, the joy that would light up her tear-streaked face. Yet each moment of hope was shadowed by the worry that his presence might not be enough. There was a question burning deep within him, clawing for attention. Was he truly capable of saving anyone? Was he still the protector he'd once claimed to be? "Stay close to me, Lily," he instructed, his voice shaky but resolute. He needed to be the anchor for both of them, to bridge the gap between his creeping doubts and the desperate need for courage in her eyes. They trudged onward, the snow creating walls on either side of them, narrowing their world into a capsule of white. Each gust of wind felt like a slap to his morale, testing the resolve he was struggling to maintain. What if they never found her family? What if he faltered like he had done before, that moment of hesitation when lives were on the line? Jake blinked away the intrusive thoughts, focusing on the rhythmic crunch of their boots against the snow. Then, a glimmer of light flickered in the distance, a warm yellow that cut through the swirling storm like a beacon of hope. "Look, Lily! A light!" he exclaimed, hope swelling within him. They quickened their pace, the warmth of purpose igniting a long-forgotten flame in his heart. As they approached the glow, they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, its wooden walls leaning precariously against the disbelief of the storm. It was an unlikely sanctuary, but it seemed safer than the howling wilderness, a forgotten watchtower amidst the tempest. Jake wasted no time, leading Lily inside, where the smell of damp wood clung to the air. "Here, we can wait for a little while," he breathed, leaning against the doorframe, his heart beating furiously. This was an opportunity, not just to rest but to regroup, to reassess the situation. He knelt down to meet her gaze, determination seeping into his soul. "We'll figure this out, I promise you." Lily huddled into a corner, her small fingers wrapping around a piece of cloth she found on the floor, resembling a forgotten blanket. She looked up at him, vulnerability etched across her face. "What if they never find me, Jake?" Each word was heavy with the weight of her fear. The question cut through him like ice. He hadn't given her the reassurance she truly needed. "They will, Lily. I won't stop looking," he promised, feeling the urgency clamor through his veins. As he gathered himself, he felt a shift within. A revelation was emerging. In this moment, trapped in a cabin with a lost girl, he was not just Jake the Marine. He was her anchor and protector, a role he had longed for, but had struggled to embrace. The storm outside echoed his internal battle, challenging him to rise out of the ashes of his past failures. But the calmness of that moment cracked as dread seeped into the corners of his consciousness. The light from outside was fading, the storm growing fiercer. Would it be enough this time? Would he be able to break the chains of his past and rise as the savior she needed? The door shook under the assault of the wind, and with it came the chilling realization. Time was running out. Determination surged. He needed to act, to break through the storm not just physically, but within himself. Suddenly he understood that the fight was not just for Lily, it was also for him, for reclaiming the very essence of who he was meant to be. He took a deep breath, resolving to take control. But just then, a sound came from outside, a desperate shout piercing through the blizzard that sent a shockwave of adrenaline coursing through him. The moment of confrontation had arrived. The shout cut through the blizzard's roar like a knife, igniting an instant of clarity within Jake. He could feel the adrenaline mingling with the torrents of uncertainty in his chest. His instincts screamed at him, pulling him towards the door, even as dread crept in. What if this was another trap? What if the voice belonged to someone who posed a threat rather than a salvation? "Lily, stay here," he commanded, the words escaping his lips with an urgency that resonated within him. This was not just about protecting her. This was an opportunity to take back control of his own narrative. He stepped toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. With each fumbling motion to unfasten the latch, memories of past failures bubbled up. The missions he hadn't completed, the lives that had slipped away. But this was different. This was Lily. As the door creaked open, the fury of the storm enveloped him, but he couldn't hesitate. Not now. He stepped outside, squinting through the relentless snow. The night was a swirling chaos of white, but the voice emerged again, strained and desperate. "Help! Please!" The sound pushed Jake forward, guiding him through the tumult. He navigated the drifts, every step a battle against the wind that sought to knock him off balance. He had not been trained for this kind of rescue operation, but instinct began to weave a path of clarity between the noise of his doubts. "Where are you?" he shouted above the sounds of the blizzard, anger and fear mingling. "Stay where you are." He strained to listen, to locate the source. Each exhaled breath formed clouds of steam in the icy air, a futile effort against the engulfing chill. But that voice, it was a lifeline, calling out from the darkness. A mix of raw determination surged through him. Failure was not an option. Finally, through the snowflakes swirling ominously in the air, he caught sight of a figure partially obscured by the tempest. "I'm here! I'm coming!" he bellowed, increasing his pace, sewing the fabric of resolution into his every movement. As he reached the source, he found a woman, her face pale and scratched, desperation ringing in her eyes. She fell back against a snowbank, seemingly exhausted and frightened. "I thought I'd never see anyone again," she gasped. And something shifted within Jake, a pulse of empathy, recognition of their shared plight in this brutal wilderness. "Lily's in the cabin. We have to get inside," he urged, extending a gloved hand. But there was an unsettling moment of silence as the woman hesitated, doubt flickering in her expression, a mirror of his own past doubts. In that heartbeat, Jake confronted something he had long been wrestling with. He had always been the unwavering strength, but what if he needed to let others in? What if vulnerability could be a form of leadership? "Please," he said, allowing sincerity to seep into his tone. "It's not safe out here. You can trust me." He could feel the weight of his own words, the challenge of opening up reflected in the flicker of understanding that passed between them. Could he forge a path to safety for them all? With a slow nod, she took his hand, and together they retraced his steps toward the cabin. The necessity to shield Lily crystallized within him, binding his determination to protect not just the girl, but this newfound ally in their collective struggle. As they entered the cabin, wet and battered, Jake's resolve transformed into a clear conviction. He wasn't merely protecting someone, he was creating a life raft for himself, one built on trust and courage. But just as he helped his companion into the shelter, the storm outside howled with renewed fury. "Jake," the woman gasped, "did you hear it? Before. In the snow." He had momentarily forgotten about the shout that had led him outside, replaced now with an overwhelming sense of collective dread. The fight was far from over. Another twist was looming on the horizon. How many more souls were out there, and were any of them in danger, or worse, a threat? As the winds howled louder, Jake felt the tension coiling tighter around them. Together they were brave, but they were still vulnerable. Something deep inside was still waiting to be confronted. The storm raged on, but the real confrontation was just beginning. The wind howled angrily outside, clawing at the cabin walls as Jake surveyed the small room, the quiet a stark contrast to the chaos raging just beyond the door. The flickering light from an old kerosene lamp cast shadows across the wooden surfaces, revealing the disheveled state of their hurried refuge. He felt the weight of their predicament pressing down on him, a constant reminder that while they had narrowly escaped the storm, danger still lingered just outside. "Who are you?" Jake asked, turning to the woman beside him, her forehead dripping with icy sweat and her hands trembling slightly. "Emma," she replied, her voice a brittle whisper. "I was hiking and got lost. I didn't think I'd make it." Jake's heart pounded. Her fear mirrored his own, igniting old anxieties that he thought he had buried. But as he looked into her wide, fearful eyes, he felt a flicker of something new amidst the remnants of his past. Empathy. Instead of retreating behind walls of military conditioning, something within him urged him to connect, to truly understand this woman's plight. Vulnerability was a risk, but perhaps it was worth it. "Okay, Emma, take a deep breath," he said, his voice steady, conscious of the need to create a sense of safety, both for her and for himself. "We have to keep each other calm. Do you remember any landmarks before you lost your way?" As she closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing, Jake's thoughts raced. The urgency of their situation was palpable, but so was an awakening within him, a recognition of his capacity to lead through understanding. In his time as a Marine, he had trained in high-pressure situations, but the emotional nuances were uncharted territory. Empathy was not a weapon or a tool. It was raw and fragile, yet it could also be a source of strength. "Yeah, I remember a creek," Emma finally said, her voice steadier. "If we can reach it, we might find a trail back to the road." Jake nodded, his mind beginning to formulate a plan. "That's good. We can't leave until the blizzard lets up, though. For now, we're safe here, but we need to stay warm." He moved to the fireplace, empty and cold, but not for long if he had anything to say about it. "I'll get some wood," he said, feeling a surge of resolve. "You stay put. Keep your body heat up." As he began to pile the old firewood stacked against the wall, he felt something shift within himself, ignited by purpose. He was no longer just a protector or a soldier. He was a facilitator. With each log he carried into the fireplace, he imagined building a lifeline, not just a fire to stave off the cold, but a connection with Emma that could potentially anchor them both in this raging storm. "Here, let me help," Emma insisted, moving to his side, her earlier trepidation giving way to a newfound sense of agency. "No, you need to conserve your energy," he countered. But somewhere deep down, he appreciated her insistence. This was her way of fighting back, her assertion that she was more than a victim in need of rescue. As they worked together, an unspoken bond began to form. Emma's determination mirrored his own. The collaboration was an act of reclaiming power over their circumstances. Each piece of wood placed in the fire solidified a mutual trust that was both exhilarating and terrifying to Jake. But even as they sparked warmth into life, doubts churned in his mind. Was their escape from the storm merely a pause before more overwhelming trials? Was it truly safe to rely on another person when he had always been trained to be self-sufficient? These considerations bounded within him, intensifying his resolve. He was uncovering deeper parts of himself, the dual essence of vulnerability and strength. "Whatever happens next, we face it together," Jake said, feeling the warmth of the fire radiate in sync with the growing resilience within him. As flames flickered to life, an unexpected shadow danced against the walls, a reminder of the unknown still lurking outside. "Jake," Emma whispered, her eyes darting toward the window. "What if there's someone else out there?" The question hung heavily in the air, wrapping them both in uncertainty and apprehension as the winds outside roared back to life. Jake felt the stirrings of fear coiling in his gut. The night had only just begun. The tension thickened the air between them, blending with the smell of wood smoke as the flames sputtered to life. Jake felt a flicker of vulnerability that he hadn't allowed himself to embrace in years. In that wanton storm of fears and memories, he had glimmers of a reality he had long avoided, a reality where his emotions weren't a liability, but an asset. "Stay near the fire," he instructed gently, needing the reassurance it provided as much as he believed she might. He turned his eyes toward the window, the snowfall intensifying, lending a ghostly luminescence to the cabin. Each gust outside echoed the instability warring inside him. They huddled in the small space, the heat from the fire battling against an oppressive cold that appeared to bleed through the creaking walls. Jake watched Emma, her focus shifting back to her own trembling hands as she tried to gather the lost points of her composure. In her vulnerability, he saw strength, the determination not to succumb but to stand firm against adversity. "Why don't you tell me about your hike?" he suggested, hoping to distract both of them from the shadows lurking beyond their fragile sanctuary. With each moment they shared, he realized he was learning, gaining insight into navigating the unfamiliar terrain of human connection. "I was just trying to explore the woods, to get away from everything." Emma's voice trailed off, but there was a power in her admission. Jake felt compelled to probe further, to explore the currents that led her here, her willingness to face the wild, even in what could become her undoing. "What were you escaping?" he asked, cautiously probing the raw edges of her openness. To his surprise, she met his gaze directly, as if confronting her own truth could help fortify them both against the uncertainty. "The expectations," she sighed, her eyes flickering with a mix of resolve and sadness. "Family, friends, They want me to be someone I'm not. I just wanted to find out who I really am." Her words stirred something profound in Jake. The idea of expectation was a burden he recognized all too well. The military had imposed its regimented norms on him, crafting a soldier first and a man second. But as the ice-choked winds raged outside, Jake began to confront his own expectations, the stringent images of who he believed he was, and who he needed to become. "I get it," he said slowly, truly feeling the weight of the truth in her statement. "Sometimes, you have to get lost to discover who you really are." Their shared vulnerability began to steady him, replacing anxiety with purpose. This wasn't just about survival. It was about introspection and growth, about seeking truth in the eye of a storm. Emma's plight resonated within him, and he felt momentum building, as if they were both being pulled forward through adversity. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed outside, the sound of a limb splintering from the weight of the storm. The house seemed to shudder, as if mirroring the tension that wove itself through Jake's gut. Together, they flinched at the sound, an alarm bell ringing through the stillness. Was the storm only a precursor to greater threats? "Jake, what if we aren't safe here?" Emma's voice was a silken thread over the cracking reality. He turned to her, the heat of fire framing her face, a soft glow amid the uncertainty. Here was the paradox of their situation. Amid their fearful isolation, a deeper relationship was forming. It tested him, pushed him into a territory he barely recognized, but sensed was essential for his growth. "To face it together," he repeated, feeling the steadiness of conviction in his voice. "We can't allow fear to dictate our choices." The night loomed heavy still, and somewhere in that frigid darkness, Jake realized they were at the crux of a defining moment. This was more than just survival in the wilderness. It was about courage, connection, and resilience. Bound together by circumstance, their lives intertwined in a way he had never allowed before but was now open to. Then, against the backdrop of whipping wind and cascading snow, they heard it. A distant thud, an unmistakable sign that they were no longer alone. Their hearts pounded in tandem, and as the anticipation built, the flickering flames danced as if urging them onward. Would they face the storm, or shy away, retreating into the shadows of their old selves? The sudden thud outside pierced the air, resonating in Jake's chest like an impending storm. He exchanged a glance with Emma, the gravity of the unspoken understanding settling between them. They were no longer just two individuals facing an external threat. They had unwittingly become a unit, bound by shared fears and rising resilience. Jake leaned closer to the flame, rubbing his hands together to temper the creeping chill that gnawed at him. His mind raced. What was out there? The isolated cabin loomed large in his mind, a fragile fortress against the world outside. The sounds of nature, once comforting, now felt charged with danger. "We need to know what that was," he declared, a surprising sense of purpose lighting his determination. The thrill of potential danger felt strangely empowering as he turned toward Emma, whose apprehension flickered like the firelight in her eyes. "Are you really going out there?" she asked, incredulous yet curious, the tremor in her voice barely masked by bravado. Jake could feel the challenge woven into her question. It mirrored the doubts that twisted through his mind, examining his resolve. But he also recognized what this moment represented, an opportunity to face not only threats from the outside, but also his own fears of vulnerability and exposure. "Yes," he replied, his voice steady. Despite the awareness of fear's clutch, he felt rejuvenated by the prospect of taking action rather than shrinking from the uncertainty enveloping them. "We need to ensure our safety, and I want you to stay here near the fire." As he prepared to brave the elements, he caught her gaze. It wasn't just fear he saw, but determination. She didn't want to be a passive observer. In this shared moment of danger, she wanted to assert her strength. He understood her reticence and managed a faint smile, acknowledging their intertwined fates. "Okay," she nodded, her voice firmer now. "I'm coming with you." Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. While he appreciated her courage, he couldn't shake the instinctual need to protect her. The dichotomy of wanting her to grow while shielding her remained a constant war in his heart. "Stay close," he cautioned, moving to the door. He pushed against the heavy wood and took a deep breath, the cold air slicing through him like a knife. They stepped outside, the storm roaring yet strangely alive. The snow swirled in chaotic formations, engulfing them in a white haze. As they trudged through the drifts, the only sounds were their breaths and the biting wind, a reminder of their fragile humanity. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of himself, each imprint in the snow a testament to confronting the unknown. "Jake." Emma's voice was swallowed by the wind. He turned back to her, half turning his body, prepared for her question. "What if we find something we weren't prepared for?" she asked, the shadow of fear slipping back into her question. "What if it's worse than we think?" Her inquiry emerged not just from the present peril, but reflected deeper existential uncertainties. Jake paused, the weight of her vulnerability striking him anew. "That's the risk we take. But we can't let fear make that decision for us. What if we find answers instead?" The life-altering potential of that thought ignited a spark within him. As they pushed further into the snowy void, Jake's thoughts crystallized. He wasn't merely confronting an outer threat. He was walking the path of introspection, questioning not just who he was as a protector, but who he could be. A partner, a man unbound by his past. The landscape changed with every step, revealing shadows and silhouettes that danced under the white chaos. As they ventured deeper, something flickered in the distance. Movement, perhaps the source of the thud. Heart racing, Jake and Emma exchanged a glance, the gravity of their choice dawning upon them. Would they confront whatever awaited them, or would this plunge into the storm reaffirm their individual fears? In that pivotal moment, Jake felt an overwhelming urge. This was more than a fight for survival but a confrontation with their destinies. He took a step forward, ready to face whatever loomed ahead, when suddenly a figure emerged, a shadowy outline against the roaring storm. "Jake!" Emma cried, clutching his arm with a mix of alarm and curiosity. What they were about to uncover could irrevocably shift the course of their journey, propelling them further into unknown revelations, or perhaps deeper into the labyrinth of their innermost selves. The figure drew closer, each movement like a brushstroke against the backdrop of white chaos. Jake's heart thudded, not with fear, but with an exhilarating awareness of his own pulsating courage. He forced himself to focus, to clearly assess this enigma emerging through the storm. Despite the swirling snow and chilling winds, there was a flicker of recognition in the figure's demeanor. Disoriented, yet determined. "Stay behind me," Jake instructed, his protective instincts ignited along with a newfound sense of authority. Emma nodded, words momentarily snagged in her throat as the weight of the moment bore down upon them both. As the figure emerged fully, the world around them faded. A girl, maybe 15 or 16, shivered before them, her wide eyes reflecting both fear and resilience. The tattered clothing she wore hung loosely, and her hair, laced with snowflakes, framed her face like a wild halo. A vivid contrast to the frozen wilderness, she stood as a testament to survival against overwhelming odds. "Help me," she whispered, and the raw plea reached Jake's core. In those two words, he felt a glimpse of his past, the shared battles, the forgotten voices of those he couldn't save. His chest tightened as he stepped forward, shifting from protector to someone who could truly make a difference. "Where are you from?" he asked, assessing her for injuries, his military training kicking in instinctively. "How did you end up out here?" Her gaze flickered between Jake and Emma, calculating the trustworthiness of the two strangers. "I got lost. My friends, they left me." The pain in her voice resonated with an eerily familiar echo. A flicker of guilt sparked in Jake's mind. How many had he lost in battles past? How many faced abandonment or helplessness? Emma stepped forward, her tone gentle yet unwavering. "You're safe now. We'll help you." The sincerity in her voice reminded Jake of her steadfastness throughout this ordeal, and the way she confronted her fears head-on. Together, they formed a bulwark against the storm, protectors not just of each other, but of those in need. With each passing moment, Jake turned inward, challenging himself to confront the emotional weight he had tightly wound around his heart. Could he learn to embrace vulnerability while also protecting others? He was facing not merely an external storm, but a tempest within his own spirit, a battle against the instinct to be hard and unyielding. "Can you walk with us?" he asked the girl, extending his hand in a gesture meant to soothe and invite. With a tentative nod, she grasped his hand, and as their fingers intertwined, he felt a shift within himself. It was a glimmer of connection that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. This moment demanded vitality, a willingness to be open, to absorb pain and joy as inherent parts of humanity. "Let's get back to the cabin," Emma urged, steering the group. The path still wound through the unhindered snow, but now it felt infused with purpose. As they trudged through the shifting drifts, Jake glimpsed the contours of his future. This girl, lost amidst the fury of the storm, became a catalyst for his own transformation. He would not only protect Emma, but also foster a sanctuary for those in distress. The shadows around him faded. Thoughts once cloaked in doubt transformed into clarity. He pondered how a single moment, a fleeting chance encounter, could undulate through his life, altering his course irrevocably. In the silence, as the snowflakes danced around them, he opened himself to the thought of what they might discover together, both for themselves and for the girl who now relied on them. With the cabin coming into view, a mixture of relief and anticipation surged through him. They were no longer merely defending against the storm. They were forging connections that transcended survival. Jake felt a determination rise within him. This was his chance to be more than a soldier. It was a step toward becoming a guardian of resilience and hope. But just as safety seemed within reach, a sharp crack echoed through the air. The storm roared anew, and an ominous shadow loomed in the distance, one that threatened to siphon away the newfound warmth between them. A flicker of dread ignited in Jake's chest. What if this storm was only the prelude to a greater confrontation? As he locked eyes with Emma, a collective understanding traversed the space between them. They were at the precipice of something monumental. Would they face whatever awaited them, or would fear force them back into isolation, extinguishing the bond they'd just begun to forge? The wind howled fiercely around them as the ominous shadow moved closer, its shape shifting in the swirling blizzard. Jake's instincts surged. He felt the call to protect shift from a mere reflex into a conscious choice. The mix of dread and determination coiled inside him. This was no longer about merely surviving the storm. It was about standing resolute against whatever threat lurked in its depths. "Stay together," he commanded, his voice steady under the weight of fear. Emma squeezed the girl's hand tighter, and Jake felt a silent pact form between the three of them. They were no longer just individuals caught in a storm. They were now a cohesive unit, vulnerable yet unyieldingly strong. With every step, Jake reflected on his purpose. Each decision he made was not solely tactical, but also deeply personal. The girl's plea for help echoed in his mind, a reminder of every life he had touched, every soul he had fought for. He had shielded Emma in countless ways, yet here lay an opportunity for growth beyond the hard exterior he had built around himself. Could he learn to cultivate empathy in the face of danger instead of resorting to mere instinct? "What's your name?" he asked the girl, aiming to create a bond, something human amid the destruction. "Lila," she replied, her voice trembling. Jake observed her closely, vulnerability threaded with remarkable resolve. "Lila," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. It held weight, a significance beyond the fleeting moment. He could feel his heart expanding, an evolving strength brewing within. The cabin loomed ahead, a sanctuary against the relentless snow. Yet, as they approached, Jake felt a gripping urge to halt. Were they indeed safe, or just postponing their inevitable confrontation with whatever emerged from the storm? He glanced back at Emma, seeing the determination in her eyes mirrored in Lila's face. Their journey was about more than just survival. It was about confronting the shadows that clung to them. "Jake," Emma's voice broke through his deep contemplation. "We can't assume the storm's the only thing we're facing. We need to be ready, no matter what happens next." He nodded, her insight grounding him. The words struck a chord, propelling him into action. There was no retreat, only the choice to forge ahead. "Let's check the perimeter," he suggested, the soldier within him awakening. Transitions shaped in the storms of his past came rushing to mind. The sacrifices, the decisions made under pressure. This was a moment that could define who he would become, not merely a protector but also a beacon of hope, willing to bridge the gap between fear and trust. Jake moved toward the edges of the clearing, while Emma and Lila remained close. Heart pounding, he scanned the looming forest surrounding them, every sound amplified in the chilling quiet. There was more than just nature echoing back. It felt as if hidden stories were waiting to unfurl, tales of those who had come before them, who had braved the elements and embraced communal bonds instead of isolation. As he surveyed the terrain, he realized that his past was not merely a series of haunting memories, but a reservoir of strength. He was not the same man who had once drifted through a battlefield numb to emotion. Each decision, every moment of fear and doubt, had sculpted his resilience. In recognizing his past, he could shape his future. Finally, the crack of a breaking branch snapped him back. Jake shifted his gaze, and in the distance, a figure loomed, a specter against the blizzard eerily familiar. The energy around him thickened, a visceral tension building in his gut. What had been a mere storm now morphed into a confrontation with an apparitional remnant of his past. "Emma, Lila," he whispered urgently, "stay behind me." He felt the storm's chill intensify, and with every heartbeat, uncertainty danced within him. This moment was pivotal. It would either solidify his newfound qualities of leadership and compassion or unravel them in the face of overwhelming darkness. With trepidation clawing at his heart, Jake prepared to confront the unknown, a moment that could forge his identity anew or reveal the fractures still haunting him. Would he break through to the other side, emerging as an advocate for the vulnerable, or would he succumb to the shadows that had long since claimed so many before him? The shadow materialized from the storm, twisting and coiling within the frosty air, evoking memories Jake had long buried. Each flicker of recognition, each silhouette evoking nightmares, plunged him deeper into an emotional quagmire. His heart raced, not out of fear alone, but from the relentless grappling of his past self with the man he aspired to be. The wind screamed like a siren, emphasizing the weight of the confrontation looming before him. The figure took a step closer, and clarity broke through. It was not just an apparition. It was a distant echo of the man he once fought alongside, a friend he had failed to save. George's face flickered in Jake's mind, and he felt the bitter taste of regret flood his thoughts. "Keep your focus, Jake," he whispered to himself, grounding himself against the knee-jerk impulse to flee. The storm's fury mirrored the tempest raging within him. He wasn't just battling the elements now. He was staring down the barbed wire of his own failures. "Jake?" Emma's voice trembled beside him. He knew she was grappling with her own fears, but also searching for his leadership. He turned slowly, holding her gaze with as much steadiness as he could muster. "We'll get through this. Together," he said, the words feeling stronger than he knew. They were a promise, a lifeline thrown into treacherous waters. Their bond had become as essential as their breath in that frozen expanse. "Just stay behind me." He took a step forward, deliberately breaking the threshold of fear. A part of him considered retreating, to preserve what little hope remained, but he pushed that thought aside. There was no path backward, only the choice to face what lay ahead. As Jake inched forward, the figure spoke, words cutting through the icy gusts like steel. "You think you can save them, don't you?" The voice was gravelly and unfamiliar, yet it resonated with the despair Jake had felt for so long. The words hung heavy in the air, taunting him. He pressed his lips together, feeling the trembling of his resolve. "It's not just about saving them," he finally shot back, surprising even himself. "It's about saving me too." The figure snickered, the sound echoing in the night's desolation. "You're not a savior, Jake. You're just a man lost in the dark." Jake's eyes narrowed. He had come too far to let despair claim him again. The storm might howl and wind might claw, but deep within him, a flicker of clarity pierced through the cold haze. A metamorphosis was underway. This confrontation wasn't merely about the specter in the blizzard. It was about facing the ways he had shunned his own humanity, choosing pain and protection over vulnerability. Instead of succumbing to the prediction of failure, Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself further in the moment. "Maybe you're right," he began, voice steadying. "But it's not too late. It's never too late. I can be more than just a soldier. I can learn to be the man I need to be." With a fierce determination, he turned back to Emma and Lila, feeling their resolve quietly strengthen from behind him. The shadows might reach for him, whispering curses of inadequacy. But tonight he would not yield. He would not become the ghost of a soldier forever haunted by grief and guilt. With renewed strength, Jake refocused on the figure. "I will make mistakes, but with every moment, I aim to choose better. I won't run." The shadow appeared to waver for the briefest moment, as if considering his words. Jake seized the opportunity, feeling the tension shift, albeit slightly. He would confront his past, armed not just with the will to protect, but with the raw courage to face the man he had once been. Then, out of nowhere, a chilling silence enveloped them as the shadow started to recede. An unexpected wave of relief washed over him. But even as it disappeared, Jake felt a lingering sensation. An unsettled thought creeping in that perhaps this encounter was only the first of many more to come. What awaited them in the darkness beyond? Would he push further into the storm? Or would the next specter materialize, shrouded in deeper complexities? The moment of truth hung tantalizingly close, urging Jake to prepare for the battles yet unresolved. The storm raged on, but a newfound determination coursed through Jake's veins. The shadow had receded, not vanquished, but merely retreated for now, allowing a glimmer of hope to illuminate the oppressive darkness. He turned back to Emma and Lila, their eyes reflecting a mixture of uncertainty and belief, threads of courage weaving them into a tapestry of shared strength. "Let's move," Jake said, his voice resolute. The cabin stood just ahead, offering shelter and warmth, not only from the biting cold, but also from the emotional tempest that had accompanied them. With each step toward the door, he felt the shadows of his past loosening their grip, replaced by the brighter possibility of connection and healing. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled as if cheering them on. The warmth enveloped them, cocooning their vulnerabilities in a shared sanctuary. Emma drew Lila closer, both finding solace in the shelter of their shared experiences. "Do you have family?" Lila asked Emma, her voice innocent yet probing. It was a simple question laden with complexity, and Jake watched as Emma hesitated, staring into the fire's flickering light as if unearthing buried thoughts. "I used to," she finally admitted, a sadness lacing her tone. "But they're not the ones I want in my life anymore." Jake could see that this moment was transformative. Vulnerability was not a weakness, but a conduit for connection. It rippled through the cabin, forging bonds that would fortify them against whatever awaited outside. "Sometimes finding new family means letting go of those who don't see us for who we truly are," Jake echoed, feeling the weight of his own truth in her revelation. He stepped closer to the fire, absorbing its warmth, feeling emboldened by this collective journey of acceptance. Lila looked between them, her wide eyes reflecting understanding that belied her tender age. "Can we be family?" she offered shyly, her voice highlighting the innocence that remained unscathed amidst chaos. Jake felt a profound swell within him. This was more than survival now. It was about crafting new identities, recognizing that they could redefine their paths together. He nodded, crouching to her level, sincerity flowing through him. "Yes, we can. We can choose each other. We can." As they settled into the cabin, the bond solidified. They shared stories and laughter, the warmth of their connection pushing away the chill from the storm. Each narrative unveiled pieces of themselves, shedding burdens long carried alone. Jake felt his past begin to fracture, its weight lessened under the light of renewed hope. The storm may have been a catalyst, but it hadn't defeated them. It had ignited a transformation. He had come to see that true strength did not lie in unyielding resolve, but in the ability to connect, to grow from the shared struggles humanity presented. Hours elapsed, and sandwiched within a cocoon of warmth and camaraderie, Jake sensed his confidence solidifying like the walls supporting the cabin. He was not just a soldier. He was becoming a man intertwined within a narrative of vulnerability and strength. The reluctance he had once harbored in confronting his fears was transforming into a quiet intensity, illuminating a clear path forward. Outside, the storm began to abate, the winds softening, caressing their sanctuary, as if a tender acknowledgement of their triumph over adversity. The sound of the world beyond shifted. It was no longer the howls of despair, but the whispers of soft snowfall, a gentle promise that all was not lost. "Tomorrow we'll make our way back," he proposed, the embedded determination in his voice ringing true. Together. Emma and Lila nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with hope for their future. A triumvirate bound not by blood but by shared journeys, love, and an unwavering commitment to protect and uplift one another. In that cabin, amidst flickering shadows cast by the fire, Jake Thompson had emerged as not just a protector, but a beacon of resilience. He understood that to truly move forward, he had to release the ghosts that lingered in his heart. It was a powerful revelation, facing not only the storm, but every part of himself that had feared connecting with others. The path would continue, marked by trials and transformations, but Jake had by now shifted into a new narrative. His heart, once hardened by regret and obligation, had begun to open, a journey toward healing and authenticity, empowered by the surge of community he had discovered with Emma and Lila. As the storm ceased outside, it symbolized a new chapter waiting to unfold, etched in the heart of a man who had learned to bravely step into the light of hope. Now, my incredible viewers, this is the moment to embrace the power of transformation. If you resonate with Jake's journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these profound narratives. I urge you to comment below with your reactions and theories about Jake's transformation, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Your support is crucial for keeping the spirit of personal overcoming alive.